every Friday, live streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. No Facebook. My Facebook is all jacked up. I can't seem to get up to land on Facebook. So we're just going to pass that by. We love that you're here with us, especially here on LinkedIn, where we get the bulk of interaction. So if you're watching for the first time, say hi to us, tell us where you're from. I know some of you also watch the Wednesday show, Job Seeker Nation. This show is dedicated to the practitioner. So Wednesday we look at the job search in the macro. Here we look in the micro, and we get really practical as practitioners. And I have two of them here, of course. First, my co-host Damien Burkle. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Good deal, good deal. And our guest today, if you've been watching the Wednesday show, you've also seen Matt Warzel. He is an actor in addition to being a certified resume writer. There, Damien, if you didn't know that.
I did.
Yeah, he's done commercials and all kinds of stuff. So, welcome
Wow.
to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I appreciate the plug for my acting. If any directors or producers are in the audience, I'm desperate for work always.
You're not supposed to say that. I don't.
I'm me and
Listen,
Leo.
you're
Me and
supposed.
Leo. I got an hour exactly.
You're supposed to set the example for job seekers. Job seekers should never be in the desperate mode. And here you are on the first line. Oh, I'm desperate for a job.
It's
What are
starting
we
off
gonna do?
wonderfully. uh,
What a guy! But he's a cool guy. I promise you guys, it's not
yeah,
what you think. But
yeah.
anyway, our conversations are geared with the practitioners. So we talk about what you can actually go out and do as soon as you finish the show end. So therefore, whatever we talk about, if you got a question, we'll stop talking about what we're doing here and tend to what you need in the chat and your questions. So feel free to ask questions, add comments. They could be slightly snarky. It's okay. We just like trying to have a little fun here. So we're going to go jump off at the beginning. There's a lot to cover. And really, I could have covered a lot more because I think this is the time of season where people are in that transition now. The joke is out. Lots of people are still quitting their jobs and looking to make job transitions. So we're here to help. Probably the first thing we hit up on uh, job search myths. There are so many of them, and there's so much bad advice on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's unbelievable these days. And there are some that I know I wish would die, but I want to hear what you. I wish it would just crumple up and go away. But what is the one job search myth you wish will crumple up? And we'll probably come up with a few that we'll discuss, but and why it's a myth. But Matt, what is a myth that you just wish would crumple up and die?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked one because I did have four to present. So I'm glad that because
Okay.
I'm sure there's many more.
Okay.
But my
Yeah.
oh yeah, and so my number one is the recruiters are out to get you or don't care about you.
Hmm.
It frustrates me as a former recruiter. Slash, I'm kind of reinstalling that arm of my business this year. In fact, so I'm trying to get kind of back into there.
Hmm.
But you know, from a perspective of a hiring standpoint, I can see why candidates would be discouraged because maybe a recruiter ghosts them, doesn't get back to them. They
Hmm.
submit to this company, always never hear from them. I get it. The candidate experience sucks for some companies, better for
Hmm.
others. It's like anything else, right? And not to say HR shouldn't try to move towards a better candidate experience. They are, but you got to realize they've got 50 other things going too, and especially right now the CHROs heads must just be spinning, trying to keep
Hmm.
up with all these factors that are coming down the pipe. But it's like with recruiters, though, just know like and I'm just going to speak from like how I used to be as a recruiter. Like we are trying to find the qualified talent to make our clients, the hiring managers, happy. And in
Hmm.
doing so, we're vetting, we're sourcing, we're working 6 to 6, 6 to 8. I mean, I worked 15-hour days. I remember back at Aerotech because we had to get inspectors at Ford at 8 a.m. the next day. So we're there till
Hmm.
midnight trying to piece together 50 people. And so you got to realize these recruiters, they want you to be the person. They are like rooting for the resume, and then to talk to you is like, for them, it's like their golden ticket of like, this is gonna be the person, hopefully, right? And so if you're not, a good recruiter will recruit the candidate, not the actual opening. So if not, hopefully they'll put you in their database and you can have some relationship with them going forward. And I'll tell you, recruiters find people work from experience. It does work. So don't get discouraged, but don't wing conversations with them. Don't communicate with them like they're your friend, and know what your story is, and don't give them your sob story and beat them up as a therapist. I mean, they're trying their best. It's expensive. It's time consuming to find someone, put them through the ringer, get them the background check, start them, train stuff. And then all of a sudden the person leaves and the recruiter's got to do it over again. So be easy on them. They're trying.
Yeah, well, great point. And I think too that we're going to see probably more restructuring of companies, because there's a lot of unfilled positions that that are going on, depending upon your industry, of course. And where there's unfulfilled positions, there's restructuring. If we didn't learn anything from the Great Recession, that's the one thing, that they'll make those positions go away or morph them into something else. Then it becomes something else when they raise the pay, when they change it or they give it away. The jobs just won't be there, or they'll be a part of something else. Then it becomes a little bit harder for someone to qualify, and that recruiter would have the insight information if you're willing to ask the question. And I think that's one thing too. If we can kind of add a or a B to your myth, is that you can ask a recruiter questions about the position or a position that maybe like it. Let's say if they follow you, Matt, and even though you're not a recruiter now, you have recruiter insights. So people want to know how to work with recruiters, and sometimes they get mixed up, even who the recruiter is supposed to help, you or the company. They work for the company, right? They work for the company, but they can also answer inside questions about the position that can help give you some insight about how to apply or whether you would qualify. So I think that's really important to know. Damien.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. You can't expect a recruiter to find a job for you.
Yeah.
They're certainly part of the mix, and it's nothing personal. I mean, you can have a great relationship. I mean, I still have a few, but that doesn't mean that they're going to find a job for me, because their job is to fill the orders as they come in from their clients who are paying their bills. And as a job searcher, job seeker, there is no magic answer, and there is no simple way to find a job. I can remember at a professionals in transition meeting, someone saying that it takes a lot of shoe leather to find a job, which brings me to what I was going to say also, which is many people think that they don't have to network, that the internet is their answer, or Indeed is their answer, when, as experts, we all know that now 85%, 90% of all jobs come through some form of networking. And if you're not willing to engage in that, you're going to have a long and lonely job search.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I got to throw out the mention. I saw you said, you took the words right out of my mouth. Is that a meatloaf reference? All right. You must have them on the brain today. We're doing a meatloaf hour with my son.
Yeah, so I guess 2 out of 3. I guess 2 out of 3 ain't so bad. Right?
Yeah. Meatloaf.
Yeah. If you were a child in the 70s, if you were a teen, you got endless meatloaf on your plate in more than one way. I think one of the things that I see a lot of career professionals do, and I think this is even a myth among career professionals, that their way is the only way, or better yet, many of them paint just either one lane, and they'll stay in that one lane. Like at once upon a time, I think there was somebody on LinkedIn that talked about how, yeah, there's nothing wrong with job boards and you should use them all the time, use them for everything. And we have the method. And I'm like, okay, I wonder how long this is going to last. And sure enough, about 5 or 6 months later, they're gone. So
Mhm.
I think, the trendy advice, but at the same time, is that you got to stop also painting job seekers and job opportunities with this one broad brush, thinking that because you can get a job in one way in one industry doesn't mean that you can get a job in another way in your industry, and they
Mhm.
could be two entirely different things. And I think even if you want to splinter a little bit of how your LinkedIn connections are, you look at per industries, every industries interact even on LinkedIn a lot different. I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but a lot of, like, if you have in the tech industry, they have a very specific way they interact. They have their own lingo, they have their own, as opposed to, if you were engineer, or if you're in retail, you have another way of interacting with people within your network that are in your industry. But
Mhm.
to interact the same way across the board, there's some things that are the same, but there's some things that are very different. And even when I even say that, if you even post different. And so if you're in it, you might have an industry where somebody, the most that they will post maybe twice a week, as opposed to, well, if you're a career professional, a lot of us post even way more than 5 times a week, but
Mhm.
we see it very often. But I think people just need to pay attention that every industry and approach, and the way you apply, and the way that you network, and the way that you connect with people are not the same. And you have to really consider the intel that you get from your LinkedIn feeds and from the conversations you have at your association meetings, or
Mhm.
even within your job, or how they interact, or where the people are, so you can connect with them, and connect with them on the level that everybody else kind of is used to doing it. Because if you seem like an outsider, then you're going to be treated as one, and you might be missing on some opportunities and some intel that will help you.
Mhm.
What else, Matt, do you have? You said you had a list of four. Let's go for one other that you might have.
All right, one other. Let's see. Apply online. I would say, okay, because we just touched on all you need to do is apply online, so that was good.
Yeah,
We can pass that
yeah.
one out. That's my second one. I would say the either the resume needs to be one page or the cover letters aren't important. Uh,
Good. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll just be brief. Like I'll say the one page thing. Everyone's different, unless you are
Hmm.
literally right out of school. And now, if you're going into 2 pages and you're out of school, it better be because you're in biotech and you have all these interns and publications already that you managed to collect. But
Interesting.
outside of like that, I mean, even if you're 3 years in, if you're 30 years in, some of my CTOs have 3 pages. Oh my God, 3 pages. Well, it's like, yeah, because this person's been in the industry for 3 decades at a high level, and I just can't get it down to two because, and that's not even going back that far. That's still only using about 15 years of experience, but it's just
Hmm.
so everyone's different. And so don't have that rule of thumb one page. This isn't the 70s where we're all in a room, or the 80s where we're all in a room with our paper waiting to go for
Right.
the interview. I mean, those things have been gone since 2000. So
Hmm.
that and I'll say the cover letters are important because half the
Mhm.
readers that read them, they expect them.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes the cover letter is real. If you write well, that's a great introduction to your resume.
Mhm.
But at the same time, if it's not well written, it could be the obstacle to your resume.
Yes.
so,
True.
so we can't forget that. Damien, did you want to add?
I just wanted to build on that. Anyone who thinks that they can have a resume that is not engaging, that does not have problem, action, result statements throughout, hasn't spent enough time on their resume yet. Um,
Hmm.
I think I saw an article the other day. The average amount of time, if it ever gets to a real human, is about 6 seconds. So
Hmm.
you
Mhm.
really need to have your stuff. You need to have it right. and you need to have it search engine optimized. Otherwise, you're going to be excluded electronically, and you really can be the most qualified person in the room, but if you don't make it through the applicant tracking system, you're going to get that rejection letter, within hours of when you sent it. So my recommendation is make sure your resume is easy to read, interesting, engaging, and also has as your lead in a career summary, because HR people, recruiters are in a hurry. They need to be able to read your resume right off the bat and know whether they're going to go on. And a well written career summary sets you up to be read, the resume. It is your 30-second commercial. It appears on the back of your business card and becomes the bedrock of your job search. And the myth I'd like to see crumpled up that's related to that is having an objective as your lead in as opposed to a career summary, because companies really don't care what your objective is. They have very little time, they have a hole to fill, they have a very specific set of requirements that they've been given by the hiring manager, and don't waste their time, don't waste your time. Crumple up objective, throw it in the trash, and do your resume the right way.
Yeah, yep. That's good advice. Two things that I want to add first on to Matt, and this is an example we was talking about, that there's going to be a contingency plan or a different way to approach, and depending on your industry. If you're applying to the federal sector, then your resume is definitely going to be longer than 3 pages because they want to know everything that you've done. They want the whole history. And I used to work with job seekers in the federal sector on a regular basis, and used to be a consultant to some base entities. And there's some that have been up to 25 pages, and so because they've had a number of career changes going throughout. Now, likely you wouldn't be applying if you're 25 years coming from the outside, but definitely if you're within that sector, you wouldn't have a 25 page. But having said that, if you just graduated from college and you had, well, put an example, my oldest son had 13 jobs in college. So they want to know everything. Maybe some that there might be a couple that may not have fit, but he's going to put most of those jobs on his resume because they're going to want to know, because that's the kind of checks they're going to want to do. So you have to consider the industry and know what that industry expects. And even like if you're a medical researcher and you've done publishing is a big deal. You may not necessarily do a resume. You may need to do it in a CV style, where you're going to have to list those publications on the back of where you've been or where you've given a talk or whatever. So there are things that are going to be different from one place to another, but you have to know that industry, what it expects, because if you're going to give a 2-page resume when they want to know a whole lot more than what you give them, you're not going to even be a consideration. And you want to always be a consideration, have a shot at it. So I think that's a thing to talk about. But yeah, I think we did a pretty good job in helping people to understand that there are a lot of myths out there, and a lot of it depends. Again, there are people who you can't always say, well, you should never apply online. If somebody says, well, I'll give you a referral, but you got to apply online first. What are you going to do? You're going to go apply online and then give that person your resume. So you got to pay attention and get close enough to get the intel. These days you could talk to, and this is kind of a myth, and people think that you can only talk to your network or just talk to people on LinkedIn. And that is certainly untrue. And in fact, the more you expand your network and get closer to the people who have jobs that you would be interested in or industries that you want to break through in. You want to get closer to them so you could find out the deets. You want to find out the intel and get close enough to be able to ask those questions. Okay, how do you go about applying? And what is some language I should include? And, do you know what's the salary range even on those kind of positions? Get close enough so you can but use LinkedIn to your advantage.
Mhm.
All that intel is there, and forget the myth that you should only connect with people you know. Uh, it, I'm tired of that one. Good Lord.
Mhm.
What's the use of having LinkedIn if you connect with people you know? It's called a phone book.
Right. Not going by
It's
that,
called a
right?
black book.
Hmm.
LinkedIn helps you expand your network and also expose you to industry insights. So use that. Anybody have anything to add before we move on to the next thing?
Just one thing, going back to resumes, and that is
Uh-huh.
be careful. There's lots of fads out there, like picture on your resume and various different formats. Remember the person on the other end. They want it simple. They
Hmm.
want it readable. Like the smallest print is 11, and able for them to process quickly. So one of the things that I'd like to toss out is the zillions of resume formats that are out there that may or may not work, and go with resumes that are proven to perform, and more importantly, make it easy for the person on the other end to understand who you are, what you've done, and what you offer to this company for the position you're applying for.
Exactly.
Very interesting because I have an argument for that.
Okay.
And the argument, um, I have a friend, Doug Perry, who writes resumes for dental hygienists in a particular state. And the dentists all love having pictures on the resumes of their dental hygienists. Now, you may think that that's an exception. I would be careful even to say again, it goes back to painting broad strokes in the sense that what happens in the larger part of the industries may not happen in exceptions. And I think that having that amount of detail is really important. Now, in general, yeah, take the picture off your resume,
Hmm.
but there are some specific instances. I bet, Matt, that when you're applying to acting jobs, they want to see your picture.
Yeah, the headshot's a mandatory in that business, and that's just exactly right. You both hit on the head. If your business doesn't mandate a photo, and again, that's up to you to do your PI work. Go figure out what is the best practice, or consult with people like us.
Yeah.
But majority of the time, any type of graphic, picture, etc. What the problem is, because when these applicant tracking systems try to parse the data and copy that material from you applying into like this software that they hold resumes in the
Hmm.
applicant systems, it won't be able to match, it won't be able to snag it. So that's why we say best rule of thumb is keep it simple. But like you said, few industries acting. Now I'm learning dental hygienist, which again too can be a little unethical in terms of hiring, because you're like, I want to see
Well,
the person.
I there's some anomalies to that. I'm not going to go into them. I,
I'm
I,
staying far away from it.
I had, as soon as I was told, as soon as he was telling me, I was like, oh,
Oh,
and I took it to the next level. And I
so did
said, but I'm gonna leave it alone with him because
I.
I had all these images going through my mind. But but having said that, though, I mean, he wrote hundreds of resumes doing that. I mean, and where people found jobs. So it helps to pay attention to those kinds of things. But I think the other part is that now, and we can talk about this too, because you brought this in, Matt, is that being that we have LinkedIn, people will have access to your picture anyway.
Right. In
Right.
Facebook,
It-
couple searches, you're going to find people pretty quickly.
yes. Now, should they find a bad picture on or no picture on your LinkedIn profile and they have their resume in front of them, what do you think happens?
I'm I personally am I'm all for having the most professional as well as having a picture on LinkedIn, because outside of the algorithm stuff that they talk about, which none of us really know what the heck, but we try to
It
assume that, hey,
changes all the time. Yeah.
yeah, and they say, hey, picture gets you more visibility. But this is the worst thing you could do, is have a LinkedIn sloppy picture. I'd almost
Yeah.
rather have no picture, just because at
Mhm.
least it's like, if it's a fast, quick recruiter's on the go, he ain't, he or she might not care as much. But once you get stopped in your tracks by a weird picture, or you chugging a beer, or hanging out with your family, it's like, save that for your Facebook profile picture. Keep it, head to chest, blank background, gray or white, and chin up a
Mhm.
little bit, or chin down a little bit, but push forward. And this is my acting stuff, I know. So
Right.
you want to chin
Right.
down when you push yourself forward a little bit, camera eye levels, and you'll be fine. Have a little polo on, or a suit, depending on what business you're in. I
Mhm.
wouldn't do any t-shirts or anything like weird like that either. So just little collared shirt, and keep it simple. Then it won't be an issue. Then they can just move on and worry about your credentials versus what you look like, or what,
Right. Right, right, right. Yeah, and I think that people have to really consider. In fact, it's like before, and Damien, you and I have talked about this before. People are checking social media up front. They're not checking on the back end. Before
Mhm.
2010, 2011, they were checking it like after you've gone through the whole process. Then they start to check your media to make sure you don't have the obvious stuff, like you with a picture smoking in a unidentified object, or at parties chugging beer. Then that game was over.
Right.
People lost opportunities. But these days, they're checking up front even before they even get your resume sometimes, because they want to see who you really are. And a lot of times you just don't see who people really are until you look without them understanding that they're expecting you. So, I think it's really important that you have that picture there, and to be visible, and kind of have a consistent picture on at least most of your profiles.
Yes.
I'd probably say we'll have almost the same kind of Facebook picture, uh, profile even there as you
Mhm.
would on your LinkedIn, so that you're easily identifiable.
Yep.
You want to keep all those things in mind. Damien, did you want to add anything else?
Um, Sometimes I get pushback from candidates that are worried about being pre-sorted out because of the color of their skin.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And so there's reluctance to put their picture on Facebook. And also, there are people that are worried about their security. And what I tell them is, I had a woman in one of my employability classes. I was teaching at a community college, and Donna and I got a call on a Saturday morning at our unlisted phone number, unlisted for 18, 19 years.
Hmm.
And she wanted to talk to me about, I can't even remember what. It certainly could have waited till Monday. But I asked her, I said, well, how did you find my unlisted number? And she said, that was real easy. I went, and she told me how she did. She said, I even know the street you live on, your address, and what your house looks like. And it was kind of like, at that point, it was like, hmm. My point being is, if you think that you are going to be excluded for any reason because you have your picture on LinkedIn, that's something that also needs to be crumpled up and thrown away, because truly, there's no such thing as security on the internet when it comes to you. And all I mean there is, unless you are a hermit, people will be able to find you. And if they're going to find you, you want them to see you, especially if you're job searching, in the best possible manner. And if you have a picture that isn't flattering, out of focus, and all the other things that we've talked about, you're doing yourself a huge disservice, because I've had recruiters that have told me that they have stopped the process when they've gotten a good resume for a position and then compared that to their LinkedIn profile, and it was like night and day. And they said there's something wrong with this guy, and went on to the next. So don't be afraid. My message is don't be afraid to put a good picture of you on your LinkedIn profile.
Well, let's follow this trail because I think it merges into the next lane that we're going into about having a competitive advantage and showing what you could do professionally. Because really, visibility now is the name of the game. It is, I think, and this is after some years of consideration. A few years ago, I took off my wedding date and my birth date off of my profiles. I mean, you just can't find it. On LinkedIn, there's one little creepy corner that's there. I just can't seem to get it to remove. But, Facebook, Twitter, all those, I don't move it. I don't talk about the dates of those things. And I think the information, the data that's important and things like that, I wouldn't put like social security numbers or anything like that. But definitely the wedding dates and birth dates are also essential to identification. And to me, that's a whole lot worse than having a picture. People are going to have your picture now anyway. In fact, if I found a candidate and tell me if this is true, Matt, if I found a candidate that had a picture and had some work of theirs that they show on their LinkedIn profile, as opposed to somebody who doesn't have a LinkedIn picture and doesn't have a whole lot on their profile, which one are you going to be interested in?
Right. Absolutely. And that goes down to the idea that there's so much good talent that recruiters can,
they can move on and keep it moving.
Right. And so if they see someone that's being active on LinkedIn, chiming in on certain posts or sharing insights, they like that. It shows that someone takes this stuff serious and that they actually want to do well in their career. And who wants the person that's there at 8, gone at 4:30? There at 8, gone at 4:30. You want someone. I mean, I get it. You don't need to be a slave to the hours either. But at the same time, it's like, no, you should be someone who wants to implement continuous improvements or keep things moving, but also improving. And that's how you have succession and things come your way. It's not sitting there blaming managers and watching the clock and, crappy workers. We've all dealt with them. And it's like, well, that's why you're an AP for, 12 years. It's like, because you just never wanted to get any further because it was just a thing you did to get, to kind of have some food on the table stuff. It's like, so I'm all for giving everyone a fair shake, but once you start abusing it or not taking it serious, that kind of thing, go. And that goes with the whole vetting process. If I see someone who's a go-getter online, someone that's got some nice branding and it's consistent and they look like a good person, they're not out there ranting and raving, being political, yelling at people. It's like, you're going to go a lot farther, I think, in your career and have people want to actually help you.
And I think the whole idea of putting your stuff out there too and showing you what you can do professionally and also making it easier for you to be found is that so that you can be easily found. Who isn't flattered by somebody finding you saying, hey, you're great for this position, as opposed to you applying to 10, 15, 20 jobs and getting no response at all. I'd rather somebody come and find me. If those are all possibilities, I do freelance writing. I love it. In fact, the past few clients, they found me because I have stuff online. I put my work out there. It's known. They hear me on podcasts. They hear me all these things. And don't think for a second because I do it because I'm an entrepreneur or have the entrepreneur spirit that would be, and you don't want to be, that you don't want to do all that. Actually, that's what it is going to take to get hired. I know somebody who's gotten poached from a podcast interview because they did this one thing, and they were able to talk about this one thing and broke it down to such a simple context. A recruitment friend of mine says, "You know this guy?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I know him." Said, "I need him. I need him now." And he got hired. It went all just that quick. Right. So I think that people miss these opportunities and miss that's being competitive because everybody's saying, "No, that's all right, bro." and they're passive as opposed to being out there. And yeah, it is a little risk to your privacy. Somebody's going to DM you a job possibility or wants to talk to you more about what you know. That's an inconvenience. I mean, really, it's an opportunity. Damien?
Agreed. Also, sometimes, and I'm working with somebody like this right now, who is afraid to share their opinions because they're worried about the impact that it might have on the company that he works for. And I
Mhm.
said, well, yeah, except there's all sorts of things that you can do that aren't controversial and are going to be a good reflection of the company. And I ticked through all the things. And basically I said, you can't wait for a job to come to you. On the level that you're at, you must be active on LinkedIn and demonstrate your opinion, your direction, that you're helping others, that when you react or discuss something in a group, that it's positive and proactive, or it's a good point and it's presented in a way that the person who you disagree with won't feel humiliated.
Right.
And this ties into what Matt was saying, in that, and you, Mark, that you need to show constant improvement in your career and keep your LinkedIn profile up to date in terms of things that you've done, courses that you've taken, uh, projects that you've done, all of those things. Because in my mind, your LinkedIn document, your LinkedIn profile is a living, breathing space for
Yeah.
you to share with the world, especially those that are in your specialty, your perspective, your opinion, and in many cases, your help for situations that you are able to address in a unique and proactive fashion.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
in your competition's doing these things. If this sounds like a lot of work, not something you're interested in, hey, I'm not even on Facebook, I'm not on anything, fine. But the playground, the sandbox is LinkedIn for now.
Hmm.
And as much as wonky and quirky as it is, and how much we all wish it was not our platform we have to live and breathe on, it is. So until you invent the next LinkedIn or want to do things a different way, go invent some other way, this is where we're at. So play the game if you want to get ahead, or at least get the next opportunity. If not, that's fine. The competition they'll keep moving. You can keep blaming other people. And I don't want to make this a career coaching powwow, but it annoys me when people think that's a lot of work.
But
It's,
it is a career coaching powwow. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
yeah. It's like you fill out this much stuff, be done with it, and then update it when something new comes, which isn't every day. And
Yeah.
then just do once a day. Go out there and scroll for 10 minutes, chime in on people that are decision makers or colleagues, whatever, that you feel would be beneficial for you to be in their little circles, and then move on. You don't have to be, it's not an all-day thing. So just have a little God, I can't even think of the basic word, but um, you know, have a little something to keep going at this route. Because if you don't have any discipline to do it, just remember the competition, they're doing these things.
And that's the issue. The issue is people who are getting the opportunities that you dream of. I mean, how many times do you have to say, "Man, I wish I would have gotten that opportunity," or wish somebody would have approached me about that opportunity, because you refuse to put yourself out there. There's something to be said about being Googled and being found, and that's one of the first places I mentioned. That's one of the first places people are checking now, and that they're contrasting and comparing, not just LinkedIn. And though yes, LinkedIn, actually, your LinkedIn profile is going to be the first thing that shows if you do it right,
Mhm.
because you get that's a heavy site. Your profile is being visited on a somewhat regular basis, especially if you decide to take the route of being engaging. But the visibility part is really, really important, because the way that recruiters even put together their own what they used to call Boolean string searches.
Oh,
that
right.
they're going to find they're going to find competing candidates on Google first,
Yeah.
and depending how they use the others, they're going to look at to see they can see from Google to some degree not whether how active you are on LinkedIn. Now, in other words, if your profile is showing empty, it's going to give you empty results. But understand how if your industry it works off of recruiters and they're heavy players in your industry, you might want to consider that's how they're looking for. Nobody goes looking for saltwater fish in a pond. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
They're going to look. They're going to go to where the salt water is to find saltwater fish.
Right.
So there you go. Anybody else want to add to that? But I think we could probably talk ad nauseum about the benefit and the competitive advantage of showing your work. I mean, and not just even having a presence, but uh, uh, LinkedIn has a place for you to write blogs, for you to post little videos about yourself that you can just take with your phone, post a video. According to LinkedIn, your video gets a lot of visibility. We can argue that that point. But all that to say, the SlideShare, which is owned by Microsoft, which I think is owned by LinkedIn or however that works. All that to say is that there's also tools in that if you want to be known for your work, then put some of your work out there, or recalibrate your work so that you're not giving away work product, but you are showing your skills and your knowledge. I mean, there's just so many ways that people, but you want to be found online if you want to have some kind of competitive advantage out of everybody that feels the way that you initially feel. I don't want to have to do all that.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Just two quick things.
Mm.
It is a way for you to control your online reputation,
Yeah.
because what you put in there is a direct reflection of you. And remember, the internet is forever. And if you recognize the opportunity to manage and build your reputation online, as you were saying, Mark, when people find you, you are providing them the perspective that you want them to see when they
Mhm.
read your profile. Because, in the old days, back before electricity, you pick up the phone and you would call this person, or you would call around. And
Mhm.
my experience is that people are so time starved, they in most cases will go to LinkedIn first, and then if you
Mhm.
pass that litmus test and Facebook, then they may call you. But if your profile isn't right, you don't know how many people, well, you do, but people that visit your your LinkedIn profile and then just bounce right off, never to return. So when you think about it as professional, reputational control online forever, then
Mhm.
you really begin to see the power behind LinkedIn and how vital it is, whether you're looking for a job or not.
Yeah, yeah. And if you have bad stuff out there on Google or somewhere on the web, like maybe an argument you had that became public or maybe even became publicized, and maybe your tweet was shown in this argument and may set a bad precedent. The more good stuff you put online, it pushes the bad stuff down. And yes, it does disappear if you put enough of that, the good stuff and the stuff that repairs your reputation. You'll have to, but it takes a little time. But, if you should be one of those who, might have even had, um, pictures of past presidents and uncompromising positions, that's not a good thing. You want to make sure that you have more good information so the bad information will disappear on those first few pages, especially. How deep a recruiter looks, I don't know, or how other people look, they don't know. But as you think about it, those of you who are single, all of us are married here in this panel, but if you're single, you want to be found online, because if you're not, if somebody is interested in you, they're Googling you first now.
Mhm.
They're looking out to see what you had, not just mostly to make sure that you're not a convicted stalker of some kind. And if you're not showing up online, then they're wondering, well, is this guy really real? Is this girl really real? So everybody has the same mindset pattern. Is that the more I know about you, the more I can become familiarized with you. Because really, the new online is the new in person now,
Mhm.
especially since the pandemic. Those lines have pretty much vanished between in person and being online. So yeah, those are the benefits. Unless you guys have anything else to add, we're going to move on to this last little topic here. Um, as a practitioner, you guys do the hard work and hard labor helping people one-on-one. I've retired from that part of the business, but in helping your clients with soft skills, or I'm beginning to rename it now, essential skills. Uh, is there one thing particular, or maybe there's a thought pattern that you're helping people to stand out in using their soft skills? I'm
Mhm.
gonna start with you, Damien.
Um, Thank you, Mark. I always recommend that a job seeker, especially if they're coming to professionals in transition, is to memorize one sentence and think about it as you go through your entire job search. 3 words. The first one is be, the second one is the, and the third one is answer. Be the answer. Be the answer to the employer's needs. And if you think like that, even when you go back to work, your whole view of job security and what a company does and does not do for you, you realize that if you can be the answer to an employer that's looking for someone with your talent, be the answer to what your boss needs to be done so that your boss looks good, all very, very important. And that's an extremely important essential skill. And it is an overused word, but it's a paradigm change because all of a sudden you're thinking about the employer first. And when you
Hmm.
say be the answer, then you automatically realign what you're thinking so that you can match your abilities with their requirements, which, oh, by the way, are the keywords for any position. And when it comes down to it, it all comes down to what you can do for the company. And also to remember the second sentence is if I like you, I may hire you. And if I don't,
Hmm.
I won't. And many times the person that is the most qualified does not get hired. And that also coincidentally explains why idiots get promoted.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. And by default, sometimes if they don't find the right person right away, they're looking at the idiot that can fill the position, at least for the
Yes.
time. At least for the time. Matt?
I love it. And I'm going to piggyback off. And I love that you had mentioned, I always say, this is a little bit into the resume thing, but I always tell my clients, my 3 pillars are when I write content, does it relate? Is it transferable, right? Reverse engineer. Here's what they want.
Mhm.
Don't just write that you can do it. Give them very customized, matter of fact, proof is in putting statements that shows them that you did it and how you achieved it and how the outcome was really positive. So that's a
Mhm.
nice. Then what's bottom line impact? What's your operational KPIs? If you don't have KPIs, what's your operational impact? Did you reduce waste, streamline efficiency, drive revenue, cut costs, whatever? There's always something because of all the
Mhm.
tasks you're doing, right? And then third thing, what's unique? So you win an award, give a speech, get featured in a newspaper or newsletter, stuff like that. So if you lean on these ideas, this is going to cut through all the redundancies and all the stuff that just doesn't matter. And going off of what you had said about demonstrating your value, what's your worth to the organization? And if you're doing the right things in terms of your job hunt and presenting your messaging, You want them to understand you have the ability to make their lives easier, resolve the pains they have because of the open requisition, and explain to them how the real benefit you have to offer, the value that you bring to the organization to do whatever that this job has. Maybe it's increasing profits or it's implementing improvements, whatever this thing is. So stay up to date on the latest skills, whether they're soft and hard, that would be mindful of this position. And moreover, having said that, when it comes to the soft skills, my biggest the part I like using soft skills is in the summary. That's my favorite spot. I think it's a nice lead into a pronoun of, if you're going to say like detail oriented project engineer or adaptive sales professional, whatever, it blends a little personality into what's overall considered a real professional document. Don't ever get cute in your resume. Keep it for cover letters, thank you letters. Keep that a little bit more personable, but your resume should be very professional. So just lean on your soft skills within the actual summary, and that's it. Leave the rest of it very matter-of-fact statements. And you had asked for an example, and I have one where I had a gal that wanted to be a leader, and she was already a contributor, like a manager though too also, right? She had some manager responsibilities, small team training here and there, but she was worried about the succession. And I said, well, go and learn some leadership things. Go learn the principles and some ideas of just what it is and what it takes. And all these continuing education opportunities online, like the LinkedIn learnings, and even I always mention this, but like Harvard has free online now. There's a lot of really nice online things that you don't even have to pay for to advance some skills. And I say, if you're going to do that, focus on a soft skill that's important in your industry, like in her case was leadership. So when she did that, she leaned on what she learned from the courses mixed with what she had already gained in terms of tangible experience from management, from being a man, minor management, and it exuded the confidence. She said the interview just went better because she was able to understand a little bit better of conceptually what it's going to take for her to be in this leadership role. So, don't knock soft skills. They're just as important, especially right now when you hear adaptive, flexible, because, you might have to work at home, whatever, on the fly. So, but don't put a whole section of skills on your resume and put it soft ones. Keep it for the summary. Use the skills section in your resume for technical, process related, or operational. I'll kind of leave it with that, though, with soft skills.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. And you brought up a point. I don't know if you even meant to bring it up or not, but I think these days that if you're not mentioning about the pandemic, not mentioning about having to change from in-person to remote interviewing, if you're not mentioning something along those lines, and then mentioning leadership in the same vein, you might be leaving an opportunity on the table, especially when it's relevant to everything that we do today, especially to the change of going from in-person to remote working, to not talk about how you led on some kind of level, and then you mention leadership, you miss a relevant opportunity. And I think a lot of times too, relevancy is as important as having the actual skill itself, because they want to see how you manage. And also in return, being able to ask about how the company has handled the pandemic, how they're also handling the fact that there are people who are quitting and they're quitting in droves. How are you handling those things? Those are things you should also be ready to ask about. And really, I think when you are willing to ask those questions, throughout the interview, you're showing that you're paying attention to the industry and what it's going through, and you want to know what's going on. But you also got to show that you have some intel the interviewer doesn't. And I think those things are also important. That's why that's where essential skills or soft skills can really help you stand out. They can help you stand out because this is my corner here. I'm a compassionate servant, leader, whatever. Then that should be a motif, so to speak, used throughout your resume and throughout your presentation on how you are those particular kinds of things. So good stuff, guys. We're at 3 minutes to the hour. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else or anything you got coming that we should follow or that we should pay attention to that you're going to be involved in?
I would say just if you guys want to follow me along, I do daily posts and I try to usually uncover the lid as to what we're thinking on this side. the hiring, the hiring managers and things. So if you go to jobstickers.com, which I'm glad you put that by my name, but like pot stickers, job stickers, check that out. And you can follow along my blog there, as well as I always kind of add in some personal stuff too. So if you want to see any of my acting things, I'll promote those a little too.
Yeah, there was one thing I was a little concerned about, but we don't have to talk about that right now.
Dad, Mom's Christmas.
Yeah, I think so. But hey, I didn't pay that close of attention.
Yeah,
Not
I'm
really.
surprised you're not blind.
Yeah, right. So that was interesting. Damien, what you got coming up?
A couple of things. There is a podcast that I'm going to be doing sometime in the next 2 weeks, depending on how things schedule out. And I would encourage anyone who is out there to consider coming to Professionals in Transition. We're doing Zoom and in person, because the secret sauce, if you will, you can get job information almost anywhere online, but getting that emotional support is another thing altogether. And that's something that I would encourage all of our folks to look into if they think it's appropriate for them.
Good deal. I've got an article coming up on lenza.com.
Great.
That'll be coming up here next week. Actually, I've got articles, a bunch of them that are going to be coming out of Lenza as it stands right now. So we'll see how that turns out. I just published signs that you would know when it's time to quit on the voiceofjobseekers.com. So I hope that you'll go and check out those particular articles. And if you can still go to lenza.com/insights, you'll see like 5 or 6 articles I've already published there over the past month or so. So got a lot of work coming out, got a lot of projects coming out, got some appearances that are coming up, and really excited for everybody to see it, but mostly the information that's going to be prevalent to an ever-changing job search environment that we're in. In the meantime, thank you very much. We'll be back here next week. We have, as a guest next week, Damien, we have Yvonne Robinson Jackson that will be joining us next week. So looking forward to that. Also on Job Seeker Nation, we got a special episode coming up, and I'm going to keep that a little bit secret until next Wednesday. In the meantime, thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoy your weekend. Peace in the Valley of Love. We're out. We'll see you next Friday.
Thank you.